Chapter 491, Invitation. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. When Zhang Ro thought of how Xiaoxing had made Jiang Heng and Ning by return empty-handed, her impression of him improved. Your friend is not bad. Jiang Heng wanted to cut the queue and even came to me to ask me to pull strings for him again. Psst. If it weren't for his old master, I would have retorted directly the first time. He even wanted me to pull strings for him twice. How shameless. I didn't agree, so he said to me that if he could use money to make the other party give up, I wouldn't be able to interfere in this matter. He looked very confident. At that time, I was thinking that if your friend was really so greedy for that bit of money that he abandoned his family, I definitely wouldn't let you get close to him. Zhang Li said with certainty, that's impossible. He values his family the most. He's very unyielding. With that, he explained the basic situation of the Xiao family. After the Zhang family found out that Xiaoxing had supported the family since the age of 13 and even saved up for his sister's surgery fees, their impression of him improved a lot. Zhang Wei knew what kind of friends Zhang Li had. It wasn't easy to meet someone like Xiaoxing, but he was still worried and wanted to keep an eye on him. If Xiaoxing was really that good, he would let Zhang Li learn from Xiaoxing. He was in his 20s, so he was still quite impulsive. In that case, invite him to our house for dinner. Zhang Li also felt that this was a good idea. After dinner, she could use the excuse of sending them off to go out to play. Good idea. I'll give him a call. By the way, his girlfriend came with him. She's the factory director of the food factory I ordered chili sauce from. When Zhang Li found out that Yu Bing had specifically come to accompany Xiaobing this time, she thought that their relationship had been confirmed. When Lin Shui heard this, she remembered. Miss Yu, the one you said was very good at cooking? Zhang Li nodded. Then I'll go look for them. It's 3:00 now, so I'll bring them over early. By the way, make more food so that he can pack a portion for his siblings. Lin Shui replied readily, no problem. After saying that, Zhang Li moved to his brother's side and put his arms around Zhang Wei's shoulders as he smiled and said, Brother, can I borrow your car? It's freezing outside. It's quite far from the military-affiliated hospital. Seeing that it was no longer snowing outside, Zhang Wei didn't stop him. He only reminded him, be careful and drive slowly. The snow has just melted, so the road is still wet. When Zhang Li heard that he could borrow the car, he nodded obediently. His two nephews also wanted to go, but Zhang Li hurriedly ran away after appeasing them. Zhang Li had never been to Xiaoli L.'s hospital this time, so he didn't know where she was staying. He went to the ophthalmology consultation nurse station first. After asking her, he found the ward and pushed the door open. In the empty ward, there were 4 people studying and doing questions. Even Xiaoli was holding a book and touching the braille text on it. After Zhang Li closed the door, he said helplessly, you guys are still studying during the new year? If the college entrance examination resumes, if any one of your family members fails to get into the capital's university, I'll suspect that the scoring teacher made a mistake. When Xiaoli and Xiaolin heard his voice, they turned around and greeted him obediently, hello, Brother Zhang. We wish you a smooth new year and that everything will go your way. Zhang Li took out 2 red packets from his pocket and handed them over with a smile. I love hearing such blessings. Xiaoxing and Yu Bing were a little baffled when they saw Zhang Li suddenly appear. It wasn't 5 o'clock yet. Yu Bing had not seen Zhang Li for a long time, so she went forward and greeted him with a smile, Happy New Year. At this point, Yu Bing paused for a moment before deliberately whispering, I wish you happiness and prosperity. The saying I wish you happiness and prosperity was derogatory in this era of poverty. Although everyone wanted happiness and prosperity, the environment didn't allow it. Over time, this New Year blessing disappeared. However, Zhang Li was different. Although what he did couldn't be exposed out in the open, he was a businessman in essence. Upon hearing this long-lost blessing, Zhang Li revealed a knowing expression and said, if you were younger, I would have given you double the red packet. After Zhang Li finished speaking, he gave everyone his blessings. After Xiaoxing looked at the time and saw that it was just past 4 o'clock, he joked, you're this anxious for me to treat you? Only then did Zhang Li reveal his motive. I want to invite you guys to my house. For dinner. Announcement, we are moving boxnovel.com to bronovel.com. Please bookmark our new site. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 492, Dirty Scoop. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. Yu Bing and Xiaoxing were stunned. Xiaoxing said, that's not appropriate, aren't you staying in the military district with your brother? It's probably not convenient. It was very troublesome for outsiders to enter the military district's neighborhood. If there was no resident to bring them in, the guard would call the other party first to inform them. After confirming that the other party had agreed to see them, he would personally send them to the door of the other party's house. Firstly, it was to prevent any communication mistakes. Secondly, most of the people living there were soldiers and family members of those with military positions, so they had to be cautious. Zhang Li waved his hand nonchalantly. My brother asked me to call you guys. It's fine. Come with me. I'll get the chauffeur to pack some food for these two little fellows and send it over later. They even thought of Xiaoli and Xiaolin's dinner. When Yu Bing and Xiaoxing heard this, they couldn't refuse anymore. After getting into the car, Yu Bing suddenly remembered that she couldn't go to someone else's house empty-handed during the new year. Yu Bing said to Zhang Li, drive back to our place first. I'll get something first. Zhang Li knew that Yu Bing must have prepared gifts. My family has everything. Just take some random things. There's no need to be so formal. Yu Bing smiled and said, we don't have any expensive goods, so we can only express our sincerity with some things we made ourselves. When Zhang Li thought of Yu Bing's culinary skills, he replied with a smile, it's only delicious if you cook it yourself. The key is that it has to pass through your hands. Just don't let it pass through Xiaoxing's. Xiaoxing's expression darkened and he felt helpless. His lack of culinary skills was his biggest shortcoming. After returning to the rented house, Yu Bing took a bag of dried sweet potatoes. She ate the dried sweet potatoes as snacks when she was bored. Now, they happened to come in handy. She also took the spicy beef sauce. Everyone was accommodating to Xiaoli's light diet now, so these 2 jars could be given away. Then, she went to the supply company to buy some fruits and pastries. As Yu Bing sat in the car, she looked through the packed gifts. Unfortunately, our goods haven't been sold here yet. I wonder if these pastries are delicious. Zhang Li had taken a portion of the goods from Xiaoxing now, so he naturally knew the situation. The taste isn't bad, but the price here is much higher than your factories. Yu Bing nodded. Then it seems that with the additional transportation we still have an advantage. Yu Bing began to think about business again. The group quickly arrived at the Zhang family's house. The houses in the military neighborhood had 2 specifications, which were single-family buildings and a tube-shaped buildings. Zhang Wei was assigned to a 3-story building and there was a small courtyard at the entrance. They planted flowers on one side and veggies on the other. Zhang Li led Xiaoxing and Yu Bing into the house. I'm back. Zhang Rou's 2 children were playing inside. When they saw their uncle return, they ran forward, but when they saw the 2 unfamiliar guests, they greeted them politely first. Yu Bing and Xiaoxing took out red packets and handed them over. Zhang Li smiled and introduced, these are my sister's 2 sons, Big Fatty and Little Fatty. Zhang Wei was watching the news on the television in the living room. There was no remote control in this era, so he had to press it manually to change it. When Zhang Wei saw that the guests had arrived, he stood up and went forward to lower the volume so that it didn't affect their conversation. Zhang Li brought the 2 of them into the living room and said, this is my brother, Zhang Wei. Brother, this is my good buddy, Xiaoxing. This is Yu Bing. When Yu Bing saw Zhang Wei, she could barely maintain her composure. She knew that Zhang Li's family background was extraordinary, but she didn't expect his brother to be Zhang Wei, who would appear at important news conferences in the country in the future. Yu Bing swallowed nervously as she greeted, Happy New Year, Mr. Zhang. Zhang Wei smiled and nodded in response. He looked very amiable, but he was intimidating as well. Zhang Wei pointed at the sofa beside him as he called out to the 2 of them, please sit. Zhang Rou and Lin Shui brought honey water and a plate of cut fruits from the kitchen. Zhang Li introduced them again. When Lin Shui saw Yu Bing and Xiaoxing sitting together like a couple, she couldn't help but think of her brother-in-law's marriage. She smiled and said, you 2 look really compatible together, unlike Zhang Li. He's already 22 years old but still doesn't have a girlfriend. After Lin Shui finished speaking, she looked at Zhang Li, who didn't want to get married, and she felt a little vexed. Look at them. They have company during the new year. Don't you feel lonely? Announcement, we are moving boxnovel.com to bronovel.com. Please bookmark our new site. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 493, Urging Marriage. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. Whenever elders saw their juniors, their favorite thing to do was to urge them to get married. Although Zhang Li was only 22 years old and there were many boys who got married after the age of 20, Zhang Li didn't even have a girlfriend. How could Lin Shui not be anxious? Her son had already found a childhood sweetheart in the neighborhood, so Zhang Li was her focus now. After all, her mother-in-law had called a few times to ask. When Zhang Li heard the question, he immediately shook his head. I'm not lonely at all. I'm usually very busy. I only have free time during the new year. Lin Shui couldn't continue this topic in front of the guests, so she glared at Zhang Li. Zhang Li immediately shut up. As for Yu Bing and Xiao Sheng, who had been paired up by the Zhang family at some point, the two of them couldn't explain. In addition, Zhang Li and Lin Shui had already digressed from the topic, so they could only skip this segment. Lin Shui chatted with them for a while before entering the kitchen to cook. Zhang Rou followed her in to help. Zhang Wei originally wanted to chat with Xiao Sheng to understand more about his character, but he didn't expect that the more he chatted, the more he liked him. Xiao Sheng had level-headedness and wisdom that far exceeded that of his age, especially his tenacity. This was the first time Zhang Wei had shown fondness and approval towards his friend, so Zhang Li couldn't help but feel a little smug. Xiao Sheng is really impressive and he's very skilled. By the way, Xiao Sheng was the one who helped me block Zhou Kuan's knife attack last time. He saved my life. That's how I was able to escape. Zhang Wei was stunned for a moment. Previously, when Zhang Li told him about this, his first reaction was that Zhang Li's capable subordinates saved him. Now that he knew that it was Xiao Sheng, Zhang Wei had a new idea. He looked at Xiao Sheng and said with a smile, "Then I have to test your skills. Do you want to compete with me?" Big Fatty and Little Fatty went to watch the battle together. Men like to challenge people stronger than them, and Xiao Sheng also wanted to spar with powerful people to learn more efficient moves. There was a room on the first floor of the Zhang family's house, and it was usually used for sparring. There was also a military sand table against the wall. Zhang Wei had educated his sons and Zhang Li in military knowledge since they were young. Unfortunately, Zhang Li didn't put in any effort to learn. Fortunately, his sons were more productive. The training room was filled with men, and when they fought to their heart's content, they would definitely have to take their tops off. Therefore, Yu Bing didn't follow them in. Seeing this, Zhang Rou came out to chat with Yu Bing. When Yu Bing saw Zhang Rou picking vegetables, she helped. Zhang Rou hurriedly stopped her. "You're a guest. If you do chores, that'll be bad hospitality on our end." Yu Bing smiled and said, "I'll be a little uneasy if you guys don't let me do it. You're all busy, but I'm the only idle person." When Zhang Rou heard this, she hesitated for a moment before saying, "Actually, I really need your help." Because she didn't know if she could do it or not, Yu Bing didn't agree immediately. "Miss Zhang, tell me. As long as I can help, I will." Zhang Rou smiled. "You're friends with Zhang Li, so just call me second sister." Zhang Rou felt a little embarrassed since her next words sounded a little presumptuous. "Didn't you bring canned spicy beef? When my brother brought the goods from your factory, I couldn't help but try them. It tasted super good. I've never eaten such delicious beef before. I just want to ask how you made it. If your food factory plans to mass produce it, I'll get him to bring me some during production." Yu Bing heaved a sigh of relief. She didn't plan to produce this. Firstly, there were few cattle. Beef was rare, and spicy beef was used in large quantities. Secondly, the cost was high, and not many people could afford it. If the market wasn't big, there was no need to waste time. Moreover, she had many recipes in mind. In the future, when people's standard of living improved, she could make other beef products. "I made this for myself. If you like it, I'll give you the recipe." Seeing that Yu Bing was so sensible, Zhang Rou reached out and held her hand as she said with a smile, "Then I'll have to trouble you. If possible, can you demonstrate it for me?" This was easy, so Yu Bing agreed readily. Announcement: we are moving boxnovel.com to bronovel.com. Please bookmark our new site. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 494, A Young Man Until Death. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. When Lin Shui came out and saw this scene, she teased, "From the looks of it, you must have succeeded." Zhang Rou smiled. "Sister-in-law, don't tease me. You were also waiting for the good news." Yu Bing didn't expect her spicy beef to be so popular. When Lin Shui saw Yu Bing's surprised expression, she smiled and said gently, "I'm from Sichuan province, but the spicy beef I make isn't as good as yours. I was really curious and couldn't help but ask second sister to learn how to make it from you." Spicy flavored dishes stimulated the taste buds, so many popular dishes in the future carried some spiciness. Because of this bottle of canned beef, Yu Bing's relationship with the Zhang family's sister-in-laws had also become much closer. When women chatted about family matters together, they became much closer to each other. After Yu Bing followed them into the kitchen, she began to demonstrate to the two of them. They had to entertain guests during the new year, so they were afraid that they wouldn't be able to buy groceries in time. Moreover, the supply company was tightly regulated, so there might not be enough goods. Therefore, every family would stock up on a lot of veggies before the new year. Families of these high-ranking officials all had meat and Zhang Li had connections, so Zhang Rou had enough assurance to ask Yu Bing to demonstrate. Yu Bing glanced at the condiments. Fortunately, Lin Shui was from Sichuan province and had spicy ingredients available. Yu Bing chose a piece of beef tenderloin first and cut it into thin strips. Then, she added seasoning wine, spring onions, ginger, soy sauce, oil, and spice powder to marinate the beef. During the marination, Yu Bing helped Lin Shui do chores in the kitchen. At first, Lin Shui and Zhang Rou tried to stop her, but they failed. Whenever Yu Bing saw a dirty spot, Yu Bing wiped it. When Lin Shui saw Yu Bing working diligently, she was impressed. In fact, the Zhang family didn't care much about the woman's family background. As long as she had a clean family background, was generous, and could get along well with the family, it was enough. Lin Shui smiled at Yu Bing and said, "If you didn't have a boyfriend, I would have match-made you with Zhang Li no matter what." As soon as she said this, Yu Bing felt that it was better not to explain the misunderstanding, lest she made things worse. "Sister-in-law, don't worry too much. Zhang Li just hasn't met the right person yet. When he does, he might immediately have 2 children in 3 years." Although Zhang Li didn't even have a girlfriend, these words struck a chord with Lin Shui. The more she looked at Yu Bing, the fonder she became. After half an hour, Yu Bing poured the oil into the cold pot. When the oil heated up, she added beef strips and fried them for 6 to 7 minutes before fishing them out. After Yu Bing poured the oil out of the pot and poured in new oil to boil again, she turned the heat lower and stir-fried the dried chili and pepper. After she mixed the chili noodles with the beef jerky, she placed a small pinch of white sugar, cumin, and white sesame. Then, she stir-fried them evenly and took them out of the pot. When Lin Shui saw this, she clapped her hands. "So you added more white sugar than me. I was wondering about it." Seeing this, Yu Bing explained, putting white sugar can increase the freshness. Because there were guests and her sister-in-law was returning to her maiden home for the new year, Lin Shui made a total of 10 dishes. "Yu Bing, take a look at what Xiaoxing's siblings like to eat. Pick them out first. I'll get the chauffeur to send them over." Yu Bing took the lunchbox that Lin Shui had washed, but she didn't pick food from every dish. She only chose 4 light dishes, which were 3 meat dishes and 1 vegetable dish. Lin Shui carefully wrapped another layer in a thermal bag before asking the chauffeur to send it over. After all the dishes were prepared, the others were still fighting intensely. When Lin Shui heard the sound of fighting coming from the training room, she immediately knew what Zhang Wei was thinking. Mr. Zhang can't bear to let go of a good seedling. He's already in his 40s, but he still thinks he's a young man. Lin Shui shook her head and said. Yu Bing didn't think too much about it when she heard this. She smiled and said, "There's a saying that men stay young-minded until they die." Zhang Rou brought the last dish to the table. She felt that Yu Bing's words made sense and said, "Every time Mr. Zhang brings me to the streets, he insists on riding that motorcycle that he finally got. He says that it looks cool. He's already so old, but he's still acting like a young man. All right, I'll call them for dinner." It wasn't until Zhang Rou entered the room to call for help that Zhang Wei and Xiaoxing stopped. The two of them didn't fight the entire time. They would fight for a while before stopping. Then, they would discuss how to fight and how before continuing. Zhang Li was exhausted from sparring with the two boys. Announcement: we are moving boxnovel.com to bronovel.com. Please bookmark our new site. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 495, Plan. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. Seeing Zhang Rou call him for dinner, Zhang Li hurriedly chimed in, "Hurry up and eat. I'm starving. Big Fatty, Little Fatty, eldest aunt made a lot of delicious food today. Hurry up and go take a look." When Big Fatty and Little Fatty heard that there was food, they immediately ran away. Zhang Li collapsed on the ground and heaved a sigh of relief. She clearly knew that her brother liked people skilled in martial arts, so why did she mention to Zhang Wei that Xiaoxing was skilled in martial arts? When Zhang Wei and Xiaoxing fought previously, they felt that their clothes were in the way, so they only fought in their long johns. Zhang Wei took out a clean spare towel from the cabinet beside him and let Xiaoxing wipe his sweat. Xiaoxing's moves were very swift and his endurance was very strong. When Zhang Wei thought of the team he wanted to build, he had a plan in mind. "Who did you learn your skills from?" Xiaoxing scooped up his clothes and wiped his body with a towel. "There's a guy who's a few years older than me in my village. He and his brother are both soldiers. I learned it from them." When Zhang Wei heard that the other party was also a soldier, he became even more interested in the person who taught him. He asked, "What are their names?" Xiaoxing paused in his actions. My older brother sacrificed himself to protect the country's borders. My younger brother's name is Xiaoxing. Zhang Wei patted Xiaoxing's shoulder and said with a heavy tone, sacrificing one's life for the country and the people is honorable. We're all proud of him. Xiaoxing nodded. People who chose to be soldiers were unafraid of death. Xiaoxing knew that the moment Brother Zhao died, he definitely felt that his death was worth it. After Zhang Wei and Xiaoxing came out, everyone sat down. After more than an hour of interaction, Xiaoxing and Yu Bing had become much more familiar with the Zhang family. When they ate, everyone was no longer as restrained as before. Zhang Wei even opened a bottle of wine. With wine at the dining table, the men ate much slower. From 6 o'clock, 3 men ate until almost 9 o'clock before leaving the dining table. Zhang Rou had already brought the 2 children home. Zhang Li was drunk. Zhang Wei was dizzy, but at least he could talk and walk normally. Xiaoxing's face was a little flushed, but he didn't feel drunk. Zhang Wei and his wife sent Xiaoxing and Yu Bing to the door. They really liked this young couple. Before they left, they even asked the 2 of them to come over for a meal before returning to City H. Lin Shuo thoughtfully instructed the chauffeur to pick Xiaoxing and Yu Bing up first before sending the 3 of them home. It was already 9:30 when Yu Bing and the others arrived home. There was a fire in the kitchen's coal stove and a pot of water had been placed on it before they left the house at noon. At this time, small bubbles were still forming at the bottom of the pot. Yu Bing poured out half a pot and placed it in the wooden basin for Xiao Lin to wash up first. Xiao Lin quickly washed his face and wiped his body in the kitchen. Yu Bing took advantage of this opportunity to light a stove in Xiao Lin's room. After Xiao Lin tidied himself up, he quickly entered the room. Xiaoxing leaned against the wall and stared at Yu Bing's busy figure. He suddenly felt at home. He was clearly in someone else's house, but this feeling was very strong. Yu Bing only saw Xiaoxing after she finished busying. She went forward and waved her hand in front of Xiaoxing. From the moment she realized that Xiaoxing didn't speak in the car, she suspected that he was drunk, but it wasn't that obvious. Xiaoxing watched as Yu Bing tested if he was seeing things. He was amused by her cuteness and pulled her hand down gently before hugging her tightly. When Yu Bing smelled the alcohol on Xiaoxing, she was surprised to find that she didn't feel disgusted even though she was so close to him. She remembered that in her previous life, before she completely gave up on Yan Yan had accompanied the supervisor to drink once. He got slightly drunk. Then, he lay on the sofa like a boss while she poured tea and took care of him. However, she was very repulsed by the smell of alcohol on him. When she handed him water, she wished that her arms could grow longer so she could stay as far away as possible. The 2 of them sat next to each other quietly. Just as Yu Bing felt that she was about to faint from the smell on Xiaoxing, his magnetic voice suddenly sounded in her ear. Yu Bing, I really want to become an official soon. Yu Bing raised her face slightly in Xiaoxing's arms. The dim yellow light shone on the side of Xiaoxing's face and gave him a glow. Every contour of his face made Yu Bing's heart pound. Announcement, we are moving boxnovel.com to bronovel.com. Please bookmark our new site. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 496, Impulse. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. Yu Bing suddenly thought of the 1-year test period. Only half a year had passed. How could she embarrass herself by backtracking? However, she really wanted to be impulsive for once. Yu Bing saw the nervousness in Xiaoxing's eyes and smiled. Then, she placed her hand on his waist and nodded slightly. Actually, Xiaoxing was just probing because he really didn't want to wait any longer. Today, when the Zhang family misunderstood but Yu Bing didn't refute them, his heart skipped a beat. Xiaoxing was prepared to be rejected, so when Yu Bing agreed, Xiaoxing widened his eyes slightly, unable to hide his surprise and shock. Yu Bing had never seen him smile so happily before. Xiaoxing asked Yu Bing again, you really agree? Yu Bing smiled and nodded affirmatively once again. Xiaoxing tightened his embrace and carried the person in his arms away from the ground and onto the table. Their foreheads touched and they looked at each other. It wasn't until Xiao Lin coughed a few times on the bed because his throat itched that the 2 of them came back to their senses. Xiaoxing suddenly didn't know what to say. Yu Bing also said. The tips of their ears burned. Xiaoxing smiled at Yu Bing and said, wash up and go to bed. After washing up, they returned to their rooms. Yu Bing thought of how she had been hesitating about whether her feelings for Xiaoxing were love before the new year. Tonight, she was so charmed by him that she was willing to take things to the next step. Perhaps love made her impulsive. Yu Bing covered her mouth and chuckled at herself. However, when she recalled what happened just now, she didn't regret it at all. At that moment, she only knew that she wanted to be with Xiaoxing. She didn't want to hesitate anymore. How could youth not be filled with impulsiveness? The two of them were only a wall away. As Xiaoxing lay in bed, he couldn't fall asleep. He tossed and turned restlessly. One moment, he thought of the first time the two of them met, and the next moment, he thought of their first cooperation. Xiaoxing was very excited and only fell asleep in the latter half of the night. After Yu Bing woke up the next day, she went to the living room. When she saw Xiaoxing making breakfast with dark circles under his eyes, she suddenly thought of something and asked, "Did you not sleep well last night?" Xiaoxing was a little embarrassed and used Xiaolin as an excuse. "Xiaolin snored last night, so I only fell asleep in the middle of the night." When Xiaolin, who was rubbing his eyes as he left the room, heard this, he immediately retorted, "How can I have snored? Brother, you're talking nonsense." He had stayed at his friend's house in the past, but no one had ever said that he had this problem. Xiaoxing didn't expect to be exposed on the spot. Looking at Yu Bing's teasing gaze, he could only brace himself and reply, "How can you hear yourself when you're asleep? Perhaps it's because you were too tired yesterday. Do you still want to eat eggs? When I went to the alley this morning, I even met a milk seller who gave me a pound of milk. Didn't you say that you wanted to drink milk a few days ago? Hurry up and wash up." When Xiaolin heard that there was milk to drink, he jogged into the kitchen. Yu Bing approached Xiaoxing with a smile and poked Xiaoxing's slightly flushed face with her finger as she said softly, "Why are you so cute?" Xiaoxing glared at the culprit who caused him insomnia in the middle of the night. He was a mature man, so he said, "You're not allowed to call a man cute." Yu Bing chuckled. "Then should I call you old man?" Xiaoxing looked at Yu Bing helplessly. Today was the 6th day of the new year, so the shops were basically open. After breakfast, Yu Bing planned to go to the department store and supply company to check the market situation. After talking to Zhang Li yesterday, she wanted to bring forward her plan to move into S-City, so she planned to take a few days off to do an investigation. Xiaoxing was a little worried about Yu Bing being alone, but Xiaolin couldn't accompany Xiaoli. He had disappeared for half a day yesterday, so Xiaolin knew that Zhang Li could call them. The investigation would take an entire day. If the hospital had an urgent matter to discuss with an adult, it would be troublesome if none of them were around. After the two of them discussed for a while, they finally decided that Yu Bing should go alone. Xiaoxing could only remind Yu Bing to be careful when she went out. Then, he took out the map and confirmed the range of the investigation for today. Announcement: we are moving boxnovel.com to bronovel.com. Please bookmark our new site. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 497, Reincarnate. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. Xiaoxing was peeling oranges in the ward. Xiaoli ate an apple and an orange every day. When Miss Zhao saw that Yu Bing didn't follow Xiaoxing to the nurse's station, she took the medical record book and pen to Xiaoli-L's ward. A young nurse with a round face rolled her eyes when she saw her leave. Is she here to work or pursue guys? She's been late every day for 2 years, but ever since she came from that young lady's family, she's been extremely enthusiastic about coming to work. Another nurse, who was older, smiled. She's from a well-off family, so coming to work or not depends on her mood. The round-faced nurse lamented, "That's right. Even when choosing a boyfriend, she only considers his looks and not his family background." The older nurse shrugged. Xiaoxing is indeed good-looking. If it weren't for the fact that I'm married, I would have been tempted as well. However, marriage isn't like dating. After marriage, livelihood will become very important. At that time, good looks will be useless. Zhao Min has the right to be willful. As long as he marries her, the Xiao family will go from rags to riches. The round-faced nurse raised her eyebrows and admitted helplessly, "Indeed, the problem of settling down in the city is difficult for us commoners, but to Zhao Min's family, it's a piece of cake." The older nurse agreed. Xiaoxing will definitely change his mind. This is something that can change the fate of a family. Even I wouldn't be able to refuse. The round-faced nurse was interested when she heard this. You also think that Xiaoxing and that young lady are a couple, right? However, I don't think Xiaoxing will have a change of heart. The two of them seem to have a good relationship. Moreover, when I passed by the ward previously, I accidentally heard that a couple wanted to buy Xiao Li's Q spot with 10,000 yuan, but Xiaoxing rejected them directly. I don't think he's the kind of person to bend over backward for money. Why don't we make a bet? When the head nurse heard that the two of them were getting more and more engrossed in their conversation, she coughed lightly. Do you want me to set up another tea table for you guys? The two nurses immediately lowered their heads. Seeing that the two of them were silent, the head nurse said again, "Get to work." Without you being in the ward, Zhao Min felt much more at ease. She smiled and greeted everyone. Brother Xiao, Xiaoli, Xiaolin, good morning. Xiaoli and Xiaolin replied politely, good morning, Sister Xiao. Xiaoxing nodded in response and peeled the oranges one by one before handing them to Xiaoli. Xiaomin wasn't discouraged when she saw Xiaoxing's coldness. Brother Xiao, I have something to tell you. Let's go outside. After Xiaoxing glanced at Xiaomin, he refused without thinking. Miss Zhao, if you have anything to say it here. Xiaomin looked at Xiaoli and said to Xiaoxing, there are some things that aren't easy for me to say here. With that, she turned around and left before Xiaoxing could react. Seeing this, Xiaoxing thought that there was something wrong with Xiaoli's condition and that Xiaomin couldn't say it in front of her, so he followed Xiaomin. Xiaomin quickly turned into an empty ward. Xiaoxing didn't think too much about it. It wasn't until Xiaomin closed the ward door and looked at him from the door that Xiaoxing realized that he had been tricked. Xiaoxing's expression darkened. Miss Zhao, it's not good for a man and a woman to be in the same room alone. Please open the door. When Xiaomin saw Xiaoxing's serious expression, she pursed her lips and smiled. Don't worry, no one can see us. She wasn't stupid. She wouldn't ruin her own reputation. She just wanted to find a quiet place to talk to him alone. Xiaoxing wasn't worried about Xiaomin's reputation. She asked for it. He was only worried that others would see him, then started gossiping and spread word of it to Yu Bing. He had just become her official boyfriend for 24 hours. He couldn't have this woman ruin things for him. Xiaomin felt very happy when she saw Xiaoxing's angry expression, since it meant that he cared. It was better than him looking at her coldly. Xiaoxing, I like you. Let's date each other. Xiaomin was very bold. If it were Yu Bing who took the initiative, Xiaoxing would be so happy that he would start dancing. Xiaoxing looked at Xiaomin calmly. Thinking that she didn't know that he had started officially dating Yu Bing last night, he explained patiently, Miss Zhao, I have a girlfriend, and I love her very much. When Xiaomin heard this, she sneered. She knew that these two people weren't just friends from the same village. You guys are only in a relationship. You guys aren't married. Besides, how do you know that you won't fall in love with me? Announcement, we are moving boxnovel.com to bronovel.com. Please bookmark our new site. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 498, Different Worldviews. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. Xiaoxing frowned. Could one cheat just because they were in a relationship and unmarried? When Xiaoxing heard Xiaomin's words, he felt that the two of them didn't see eye to eye, so he said with a cold expression, I don't need to know. I only know that other than love, I have responsibilities towards her as well. Miss Zhao, you deserve to find a better person. I owe a lot of money because of my sister's treatment, and I'm a country bumpkin. I'm not worth your effort. Please move aside. I want to go out. When these words reached Xiaomin's ears, she felt that she had good taste in men. Xiaoxing was responsible and loyal, so she didn't want to let go even more. What if I don't let you? Xiaoxing stared at Xiaomin with an impassive expression for a few seconds. Then, he looked around and walked to the window opposite the door. After he estimated the distance, he jumped down. Xiaomin was so frightened that she hurriedly ran to the window. She saw that the moment Xiaoxing touched the ground, he rolled forward twice to deflect the impact. There was grass under the window. After Xiaoxing stood up and patted the weeds and dust off his body, he entered the hospital building through the door again without looking back. His swiftness made Xiaomin's heart flutter. She covered her face with both hands as she stared at Xiaoxing's departing figure with a smile. Yu Bing met an unexpected person. Yu Bing. When Yu Bing heard the familiar voice, she could guess who it was without turning around. Just as she stopped, Yu Pan rushed in front of her. As Yu Pan looked at Yu Bing's beautiful face, she felt a little upset. She was originally the prettiest in the family, and even Yu Yin wasn't as pretty as her. Now, she was actually outshone by Yu Bing. Although she had fallen out with her family last time, Yu Bing still had to pretend in front of outsiders, so she smiled and greeted, Happy New Year. When Zhang saw Yu Bing, he quickly sized her up. There were no patches on her clothes, and she looked even prettier than the last time they met. Zhang's eyes flickered as he said, Happy New Year. We didn't have the chance to talk more the last time we met. It's almost lunchtime. Let's find a place to eat together. When Yu Pan heard this, she looked at Zhang in surprise. This time, they appeared in S-City because Zhang wanted to break up with her, but Yu Pan didn't want to break up. She knew that Zhang had always wanted a foreign technical translation book related to Zhang's current job. However, only S-City had this book. Moreover, one had to have a special stamp in order to buy such a book. Not everyone could buy it. Yu Pan found an old classmate from a newspaper agency to help. She put in a good word for him and gave him a gift. She spent the 20 yuan she had saved up to get a stamp in order to win Wenjing over. Thus, Wenjing didn't mention the breakup again. This time, she insisted on coming with Wenjing to buy the book. Yu Pan's idea was very simple. She wanted to appease Wenjing during this trip. The two of them had been in a relationship for more than half a year. At first, Yu Pan had the upper hand. However, for some reason, Yu Pan actually fell for him. In fact, Wenjing's family background was very ordinary. His parents were both employed, but there were 6 children at home. He was the 4th oldest. He had 2 elder sisters and an elder brother and 2 younger brothers. As a middle, he wasn't paid much attention to by his parents. Before he was assigned to the agency's dorm, the two of them could only squeeze on the iron bed in the one family's living room. Yu Pan, who had always been realistic, completely changed when she met Wenjing. Wenjing was a pragmatic person. He realized that Yu Pan's family background was better than his, but her family was misogynistic. Moreover, she only had looks but no brains, so he immediately wanted to dump her. He was looking for a helper, not a useless vase. It wasn't until Yu Pan unintentionally mentioned that Yu Bing was the director of the delicious food factory before the new year that he didn't insist on breaking up anymore. He had gone to City H for a business trip previously and knew that this brand was very famous in the Jiang province. To be able to make this brand so famous in such a short period of time, Yu Bing had to have some connections. Previously, they had not been able to talk, so Wenjing was determined to build a relationship with Yu Bing this time. Yu Bing wasn't familiar with Wenjing, so she rejected, "No need. I still have something to do. You guys can eat first." Wenjing smiled and said in a gentle voice, "No matter how busy you are, you still have to eat. Moreover, it's a joyous occasion for the two of you to meet out of town so coincidentally during the new year. The first time we met was too sudden last time. I was really a little embarrassed that I didn't prepare a welcome gift or treat you to a meal last time. Take it as me making up for it this time. Announcement: we are moving boxnovel.com to bronovel.com. Please bookmark our new site. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 499, Hope of Marriage. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations. When Yu Pan heard this, she felt that Wenjing definitely still had her in his heart. Otherwise, why would he think of treating her family to a meal? Wasn't this a sign of goodwill? She felt touched and actually treated Yu Bing nicer than usual. Yu Pan smiled and held Yu Bing's hand as she said, "That's right. It's rare for us to get together under such circumstances. Don't be shy." Yu Bing didn't want to be too involved with the Yu family, but at this moment, her stomach growled. Yu Bing blushed slightly, and Yu Pan kept pulling her into the restaurant beside her, so she didn't refuse. "Thanks for the treat, brother one." Wenjing smiled amiably. "We're family." These words made Yu Pan's heart pound, and she felt that there was hope for their marriage. She decided to perform well in front of Wenjing today and let him see her gentle and considerate side to her family. Thinking of this, she became even more enthusiastic towards Yu Bing, but this contrast frightened Yu Bing so much that she thought that Yu Pan must be out of her mind. Wenjing ordered red braised pork and stir-fried vegetables. Although there were only 2 dishes, they were enough. Yu Pan felt very proud. Red braised pork was quite extravagant. While waiting for the dishes to be served, Yu Pan asked curiously, "Why are you in City S at this time?" Yu Bing hid the Xiao family's matter and said coldly, "It's boring to stay in the village, so I came out to inspect the market." Wenjing looked at Yu Bing in admiration and said with a smile, "Previously, I heard from Yu Pan that you're the director of the food factory. I was thinking that since a young lady like you achieved this position, you must be very smart. Now, it seems that you're diligent as well." Wenjing sounded very smarmy. As Yu Bing looked at Wenjing, she felt that if this person wasn't really gentle and honest, he must be cunning and sly. However, this was only the second time they met, so Yu Bing didn't jump to conclusions and only chatted with the other party as if they were ordinary friends. Because Yu Pan didn't cause trouble and even smiled from time to time, Yu Bing enjoyed the meal quite comfortably. Yu Bing could also tell that Wenjing wasn't as unassuming as he looked on the surface. Instead, he was a very smart person. He was sensible, eloquent, and motivated. He had a strong sense of purpose and was indeed much better than the husband Yu Pan had found in her previous life. However, with his IQ, he could manipulate Yu Pan very easily, unlike in her previous life, where the husband and wife maintained an equal relationship and neither took advantage of the other. However, Yu Bing couldn't be bothered with Yu Pan's private matters as long as she didn't provoke her. Wen Jing also realized that Yu Bing wasn't as meek as she looked. She was decisive and smart. Her brilliant thoughts impressed him, and talking to her even made him feel that he was too ignorant. Wen Jing knew that being a factory director definitely wasn't Yu Bing's zenith. It was very good to be friends with such a person, but Wen Jing felt that if she was his wife, he couldn't control her. It was better not to provoke her or become an enemy. After the two of them separated, Wen Jing looked at Yu Pan, who was still smiling foolishly, and shook his head helplessly. She didn't understand his ulterior motive towards Yu Bing at all. When Yu Pan saw that Wen Jing was still holding the book, she hurriedly took it. "I'll take it. Don't tire yourself out." Wen Jing glanced at Yu Pan and suddenly felt that marrying her seemed to be a good choice. Yu Pan's heart was filled with him, so he wasn't worried about being cheated on at all. Most importantly, Yu Pan had always been obedient to him. Moreover, even in such a misogynistic family, she still fought for her own rights and interests instead of helping her brother curry favor with her parents. She was on the... As long as he had a good relationship with his sister-in-law, he believed that he would definitely be able to get some help from her in the future. After all, with his family background, it was very difficult for him to marry someone with better conditions. After making up his mind, Wen Jing said to Yu Pan, "Let's get married." Yu Pan was so surprised that she didn't even know that the book in her hand had fallen. She looked at Wen Jing in a daze as she asked in disbelief, "Are you serious?" When Wen Jing saw Yu Pan's expression, he smiled and bent down to pick up the book. "But you also know my family's situation. I can't give you any betrothal gifts. I wonder how much your family wants." Yu Pan knew that her parents would definitely ask for an exorbitant amount. She couldn't let them ruin her marriage. Her eyes darted around as she said, "I'll go home and ask around first." Yu Bing didn't know that her appearance had actually facilitated Yu Pan's marriage. She was busy until 5 in the afternoon before driving back to the rented house to prepare dinner. Yu Bing had told with Xiaoxing that she would come back every day to cook and bring the food over, so Xiaoxing wouldn't have to run back and forth in the cold. Announcement: we are moving boxnovel.com to bronovel.com. Please bookmark our new site. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much. Chapter 500, Nothing. Translator, Henyi Translations. Editor, Henyi Translations. Ever since that incident, Zhao Min had gone to Xiao Li's ward even more frequently. However, Xiaoxing had been tricked once, so he refused to talk with Zhao Min alone anymore. No matter what excuse she used, he would at most talk to her in the corridor of the ward. Even Xiao Li and Xiao Lin felt that something was wrong. The round-faced nurse watched as Zhao Min turned into Xiao Li's room again and shook her head. How can she be so thick-skinned? Xiaoxing clearly doesn't want to talk to her. When the older nurse saw Yu Bing walking over from the staircase, she nudged the round-faced nurse with her shoulder and said excitedly, "There's gonna be drama." When Yu Bing entered the room, she saw Zhao Min smiling sweetly at Xiaoxing. She smiled and greeted her calmly, "Miss Zhao, you're quite free. Every time I come, you're checking on Xiao Li." Zhao Min raised her head slightly. "This is my responsibility. There aren't many people in the ophthalmology department who are hospitalized now, so I naturally have to do my best. After all, I can help. On the other hand, it's quite hard on you. Although everyone knows how to cook, when things get busy, such a small matter can only be done by those who are idle." Zhao Min's words made it clear that she was more useful than Yu Bing, who could only do small things that everyone knew how to do. Yu Bing wasn't irked at all. She smiled and placed the lunchbox on the cabinet. Xiaoxing knew very well how much Yu Bing had helped him, but she couldn't tell anyone about this, or else she would implicate him and make people look down on him. This was the first time Xiaoxing showed anger towards Zhao Min ever since he jumped out of the window a few days ago. "Miss Zhao, our family is preparing to eat. Please get out immediately." When Zhao Min saw that Xiaoxing didn't care about her reputation at all and embarrassed her in front of so many people, her eyes instantly turned red. She glanced at Yu Bing, who ignored her, and knew that Xiaoxing was angry because she had provoked Yu Bing just now. The anger in her heart intensified. She glared at Yu Bing and turned to leave. As Yu Bing looked at Zhao Min, who had lost without her even having to make a move, she thought of a future saying. A smart woman would deal with men. Only a stupid woman would deal with women. If Zhao Min really snatched Xiaoxing away, she would treat it as her misjudging Xiaoxing. Xiao Li and Xiao Lin could sense Xiaoxing's anger, so the two of them were extremely quiet as they held their lunchboxes. Seeing this, Yu Bing smiled and said, "Why are you guys standing there in a daze? If you guys don't eat now, the food will get cold." With that, Yu Bing picked up the remaining lunchbox and walked to Xiaoxing. Then, she looked up with a smile and said, "Let's eat." Xiaoxing took the lunchbox and secretly glanced at Yu Bing. When he realized that she didn't seem angry, he was relieved. The day after our relationship became official, I told her that I had a girlfriend. I can count the number of times I've talked to her these past few days on my fingers. We were always discussing Xiao Li's condition. Yu Bing chuckled. What's there to be angry about? Didn't you already chase her away? Xiaoxing saw the trust in Yu Bing's eyes and smiled. My attitude has always been firm. When Xiao Li heard their conversation, she asked in surprise, brother, sister. Yu Bing, are you two together? Xiaoxing was a little embarrassed by his sister's question, but Yu Bing smiled and continued, yes, do you welcome me into your family? Xiao Li smiled and shouted, of course you're welcome. Xiao Lin still had food in his mouth, but he couldn't wait to express his stance. I welcome you too. I asked brother to marry you early on, but he was unwilling to at that time. Xiao Lin was so happy that he sold Xiaoxing out. Xiaoxing glared at Xiao Lin, who was still talking nonstop, and explained to Yu Bing in embarrassment, with my family's previous situation, I didn't intend to get married, nor did I want to implicate you. Yu Bing knew Xiaoxing's character, so she said jokingly, sometimes, 1 + 1 isn't just equal to 2, but also 3. After you met me, didn't you get everything? That's more than 3. Xiaoxing smiled when he heard this. He felt that all the luck in his life might have been used on meeting Yu Bing. Perhaps Xiaoxing's words that day had really dealt Xiaomin a blow, but they didn't see her for a few days. She only went to work 2 weeks after the surgery, when Xiao Li's gauze had already been removed. Xiaomin had been home these past few days, but when she was alone, she would always think of Xiaoxing, especially when she played with young masters of the same social class as her. She couldn't help but compare them. They weren't as good-looking as Xiaoxing, nor were they as responsible as Xiaoxing. They weren't good at fighting and weren't considerate enough. Other than having a better family background than Xiaoxing, they were nothing in comparison. Announcement, we are moving boxnovel.com to bronovel.com. Please bookmark our new site. Sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you very much. Subscribe and read more novel to help us update chapter quickly. Thank you so much.